What brings us to Mayflower Hill Cemetery in Taunton, Jeff?
This is where the story ends for one of the most notorious serial killers, and not just Massachusetts, not just New England, but really in the history of the entire country.
Wow. All right, so whose headstone are we looking for?
Okay, that's the thing. The person doesn't have a headstone, so we're heading over to the pauper's grave section. All we have is a number, 984.
Okay, well, I can see an empty section of the cemetery.
Right?
Oh, look, there's numbers on the ground.
Right.
There's these brass circles with numbers on them. I see 981. I don't see 984.
So it's possible, maybe even likely, that 984 was stolen by someone in the know, but we're definitely close. She's buried right near here.
Is she?
Yeah, I know the vast majority of serial killers are men,
Yeah.
but this woman was responsible for anywhere between 31 and 100 murders. Ray, we're on the hunt for the notorious Jolly Jane Toppan. I'm Jeff Belanger, and welcome to episode 237 of the New England Legends podcast. Give us about 15 minutes. We'll give you something strange to talk about today.
And I'm Ray Auger. Thanks for joining us on our mission to chronicle every legend in New England one story at a time. We explore everything from haunts and monsters to roadside oddities to true crime personalities who have left a permanent mark on our region.
These are people we can't forget, no matter what. And did you know that most of our story leads come from you? This one did, thanks to our buddy Frank Grace, photographer extraordinaire and my partner in the Haunted New England calendar. He sent this story in to us, and we love it when you reach out to us through our website, through our social media, or in our super secret Facebook group.
All right, now before we go looking for this serial killer, we want to take just a minute to thank our sponsor, Notorious Herbals.
It's March, Ray, which means a lot of things. It means winter is coming to an end.
That's right.
It means it's your birthday today. Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you so much.
Of course, and it means we all got to start moving around again. It's time to shake off our winter hibernation.
Which is why I'm drinking Wind Dancer tea from Notorious Herbals. It contains all natural herbs and ingredients meant to energize the body. I'm ready to start moving around again and get my bikini body back in time for the summer.
Of course, yeah. Well, Wind Dancer tea has green leaf, peppermint leaf, spearmint leaf, ginger root, licorice root, stevia leaf, and other natural ingredients from Mother Earth designed to put a little extra wind under your wings. Let Notorious Herbals help support your healthy lifestyle. Check out the Notorious Herbals website to see all of their great products, and you legendary listeners can dance your way through March with 20% off your order when you use the promo code LEGENDS20 at checkout. Please support the people who are supporting us. Visit NotariousHerbals.com. That's N-U-W-A-T-I herbals with an S.com.
All right, Jeff, so there's no marker for Jolly Jane Toppan. We can't even find her number.
Right.
But she's buried beneath our feet somewhere nearby.
Yeah, she is. And her method of murder, her M.O., is what makes her the most chilling.
Yeah, and stories of serial killers always make me uncomfortable.
Yeah, me too. But what makes you uneasy about it, Ray?
Well, because no one sees them coming.
Right,
They
right.
kind of blend in. And when we look into serial killers, I find myself looking over my shoulder a little more than usual for a while after.
Yeah, no, they do blend in. I mean, that's the hallmark of a serial killer. They go unnoticed. And the same can be said for Jolly Jane.
All right, then let's head back to 1887 and meet her.
It's the fall of 1887, and 33-year-old Jane Toppan has just started her training at Cambridge Hospital. She's going to become a nurse.
Jane is a big girl, friendly. She smiles a lot. She quickly wins the hearts of her employers, who believe she's got the perfect disposition for nursing. She's also single and never been married. Something unusual for a 33-year-old woman these days. But the bosses at Cambridge Hospital figure that's a good thing. She's not likely to leave her job anytime soon and start a family.
We should fill in a little more background on Jane Toppan here.
Okay.
Well, first, she was not born Jane Toppan.
No?
She was born Honora Kelly right here in Boston in 1857. She's the youngest of four girls, born to poor Irish immigrants. Sadly, Honora's mother died from tuberculosis when she was only a year old. Their father, Peter Kelly, was a tailor, and raising four girls alone was more than he could take. His neighbors called him Kelly the Crack because people said he lost his mind. Some even say he tried to sew his eyelids shut, and there were rumors that he abused his daughters.
Oh, man, that's terrible.
So when Honora was 6 years old, her father brought she and her sister to the Boston Female Asylum. This was basically an orphanage that promised to place the girls into respectable families when they turned 10 years old. Now from here, all the sisters split up. One eventually turned into an alcoholic and a prostitute. Another wound up in an insane asylum. But Honora found a home in Lowell, Massachusetts, as an indentured servant to Mrs. Anne Toppan.
So now we know where the name Toppan comes from.
Right.
These are not popular times to be Irish. And Mrs. Toppan didn't want people to think that she had an Irish person living under her roof, so they renamed her Jane Toppan and said she was an Italian girl whose parents died at sea.
So Honora, or Jane as she's known now, has already had a pretty tough life.
Still, she's a good student in school, but given she's basically living a full-time lie, she starts to show signs of being a pathological liar.
What's she saying?
My sister married an English nobleman. My brother was presented with a medal by President Lincoln after the Battle of Gettysburg. My father has sailed around the world.
It sounds like no tale is too tall for her.
Well, lying comes easy to Jane.
After graduating high school, the Toppans freed Jane from her indentured service and gave her $50. And since she had nowhere else to go, Jane continued living in the Toppan house as a servant.
After Anne's death, her daughter Elizabeth took over the house in Lowell, and Jane continued to be the servant. But once Elizabeth married the church deacon and he moved into the house, there was a strain, and Jane had to leave the house she called home for 20 years.
So here we are now in 1887, and Jane is learning to be a nurse at Cambridge Hospital. She's cheery and chatty, but also seems to be a bit of a gossip. And she's still lying quite a bit.
The Tsar of Russia once offered me a nursing job.
Jane is also curious about the human body. She asked to attend some autopsies, to learn.
Sure, I can imagine that would be interesting if you don't mind being around dead people.
Well, that's what the hospital administrators think too. But Jane asked to attend more and more autopsies. It's getting a little weird.
There's also talk of hospital items going missing. And some of the other nursing trainees believe Jane is experimenting with morphine and atropine on her older patients. I mean, there's rumors.
One patient has an odd complaint after her surgery. She tells the doctors that Nurse Jane gave her some bitter medicine that caused her to lose consciousness. The patient said when she came to, Jane had crawled into bed with her and was kissing her face.
Oh, come on. That sounds like, maybe some heavily medicated dream or something.
Well, that's what this patient figured too. Must have been a post-operation medicine-induced dream.
So when she's not working, Jane loves to drink beer, gossip, and she likes turning her friends against each other. She seems to get a kick out of causing trouble.
But on the job, doctors see her as happy and competent. She soon earns the nickname Jolly Jane.
After Cambridge Hospital, Jolly Jane moves on to work at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. She's earning good money, and her employer's only complaint is that she seems to give out the opiate drugs a little too freely.
As with any hospital, sometimes patients die. It happens.
But it seems to happen to Jolly Jane's patients slightly more.
Maybe that's because she's often assigned to the more difficult cases, the elderly and the very sick.
Right, no, that makes sense. I'm sure that's all it is, but then some of her fellow nurses overhear her make strange comments.
There's no use keeping old people alive.
Ouch!
I know, right? Still, when 70-year-old Mary McClear got sick while visiting Cambridge, her doctor sent Jolly Jane to care for her because Jane was one of his best nurses. Now, being alone with a patient with no supervision is more than Jane can resist. Jane administers strychnine to McClear, then sits and watches as the elderly woman draws her last breath. Jane then lies in bed with the corpse because it thrills her.
Because Mary McClear was elderly and sick, everyone assumed it was just her time. Not too many questions were asked.
Jolly Jane understands opiates and poisons. They can be difficult to spot, making them the perfect murder weapon.
Jane poisons her elderly landlord and his wife.
They were feeble and fussy, old and cranky.
She even poisons a friend with strychnine so she can take her job as a dining hall matron at the St. John's Theological School in Cambridge. Jane gets the job, but she doesn't last long. Money is missing, and they suspect Jane, so they let her go.
Jane continues to find nursing work, and when the opportunity presents itself, sometimes her patients die, and she has moments alone with the corpse.
It's now the summer of 1899. Jane is still in touch with the Toppan family. One day, Elizabeth Toppan, who is now Elizabeth Brigham by marriage, complains to Jane that she's suffering from depression. So Jane invites Elizabeth to join her for a few days on Cape Cod. Jane prepares a picnic lunch for the two of them. There's cold corned beef, taffy, and mineral water, though Elizabeth's mineral water has an extra ingredient, strychnine.
I held her in my arms and watched with delight as she gasped her life out.
With Elizabeth out of the way, Jane moves back into her former house. Her goal is to marry the widower Brigham and claim her rightful place as the head of that house. Within 3 days of arriving, Jane poisons their 77-year-old housekeeper. Jane then takes over the housekeeping duties to try and impress Mr. Brigham.
But Brigham makes it clear he doesn't want her as a housekeeper or a wife.
Jane even tries to give Brigham a small amount of poison so she can nurse him back to health. And when that doesn't work, she threatens to tell everyone that he got her pregnant. And that's the last straw. Brigham orders her out of his house for good.
It's 1901 when Jane is renting a cottage in Bourne, Massachusetts, right on the Cape. Jane had fallen behind on the rent, so the owner's wife, Mattie Davis, comes to collect. Jane, being a gracious host, serves her a cocktail of drugs that kill her. Jane then moves in with the widower, Alden Davis, under the guise of caring for him. She soon slips him a similar cocktail. And Alden Davis is now dead.
Jane, now on a spree, poisons two of the Davises' married daughters, Minnie Gibbs and Geraldine Gordon, killing both of them. It's Minnie Gibbs' father-in-law who becomes convinced there's foul play. I mean, how could 4 family members die so soon after each other? He convinces a judge to allow investigators to exhume Minnie's body and perform an autopsy. And when they do, they discover large amounts of morphine and atropine. Minnie was murdered.
Police quickly investigate the people, or rather the person, these victims all have in common, Jane Toppan. She's arrested October 29, 1901, for the murder of the Davis family.
Once in court, Jane confesses to her lawyer that she's killed at least 31 people and maybe as many as 100. She claims the killing spree started after getting dumped by her boyfriend when she was 16 years old.
If I had been a married woman, I probably would not have killed all of those people. I would have had my husband, my children, and my home to take up my mind.
Jane Toppan is found not guilty by reasons of insanity. She's confined for the rest of her life to Taunton State Hospital. Once she's locked away, she's no longer able to kill, but that doesn't mean she doesn't still think about it. Some of her attending nurses claimed she'd often say,
"Get some morphine, dearie, and we'll go out in the ward. You and I will have a lot of fun seeing them die."
Jolly Jane Toppan died August 17, 1938, and was buried in a pauper's grave right here in Mayflower Hill Cemetery in Taunton. Think about it. Who do we trust more than nurses?
I think when we're in a hospital, we trust the nurses more than the doctors.
No, I agree. I mean, they spend much more time with the patients. We trust them. They're our own Florence Nightingale, no matter how bad we're feeling. If one of them were up to no good, I mean, we'd never see it coming.
So Jolly Jane took the lives of between 31 and 100 people? That's a pretty wide discrepancy.
No, it is. I get that. I guess she poisoned some patients or gave them too many opiates, but didn't confirm if they died as a direct result. I guess with some patients in the hospital, she administered some amount of the drugs and then walked out of the room. Some may have died, others pulled through, so she didn't really keep track.
I can't believe I've never heard of Jolly Jane before today.
To be honest, I hadn't either.
You'd think she'd be as famous as Ted Bundy, Jack the Ripper, or H.H. Holmes.
Yeah, and she's not. Like a good serial killer, she's still flying under the radar, blending into the landscape without so much as a marker or a headstone.
If you want to see some pictures and headlines of Jolly Jane Toppan, sneak over to our website and click on episode 237.
And while you're on our website, you can find a link to our Patreon page. Our Patreon patrons have been with us since almost the very beginning. This growing group of New England Legends insiders helps us with all of our costs associated with producing this show. I mean, we're not backed by some big podcast network. We're backed by you. If you can help the cause, head over to patreon.com/New England Legends. For just $3 per month, you get early access to new episodes, plus bonus episodes and content that no one else gets to hear. Just go to patreon.com/New England Legends.
We'd like to thank Lorna Noguera for her voice acting talents this week, and our theme music is by John Judd.
Okay, Ray, serial killers.
Serial killers, Jeff.
Boy, this one, I hadn't heard of Jolly Jane before.
How did we not? How could we not?
And when you consider she's killed more people than Ted Bundy and, I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
In the way that she did.
Right.
She was so sweet. Everyone loved her, and she's killing people. That's a story that you'd think you hear.
And as a nurse, I mean, she chose her targets well, right? Someone elderly, someone already sick. No one's going to ask any questions.
Right.
Right? Like, oh, I guess they were that sick, right? One of the people that we compared her to, of course, was H.H. Holmes, which Devil in the White City, the guy that built the hotel at the Chicago World Fair.
Right.
So he could sneak in and out of rooms and kill people, right? I mean, this guy is...
It was based on a what's that TV show? The Fox's American Horror Story.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
There was a hotel, and he had
right.
the back rooms, and
Yeah, that was absolutely based on the work of H.H. Holmes, who, of course, was born Herman Webster Mudgett in 1861 in Gilmanton, New Hampshire. Right. So he's a New England local. Now, funny thing, he confessed to 27 murders. H.H. Holmes did. That's what he confessed to, which is still less than the 31 for Jolly Jane. And by the way, people think the real number for H.H. Holmes is probably lower than that. They think he actually exaggerated because
bragged a bit.
Yeah, because he said, "Oh, I killed this person," and then they would look that person up and say that person's still alive. So, funny thing though. So I happen to know H.H. Holmes's great grandson. His name is Jeff Mudgett.
Okay.
Right, Mudgett, same as Herman Webster Mudgett, and Jeff Mudgett wrote the book Bloodstains. Really fun guy, jovial guy, and I got to have a drink with him once at a paranormal conference because he was talking about the prolific murders of H.H. Holmes. And I said to him, does it ever bother you? We're saying he's a fun guy, he's lots of laughs. I said, does it ever bother you, that the blood that ran through H.H. Holmes runs through you? And he got real serious for a second, and he leaned in and he goes, you know what? Sometimes it does. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so scared right now.
Did you have your hand over your drink the whole time?
I was just
don't turn your back on him.
I was shaking. And he's a sweet guy, Jeff Mudgett.
Sure, they all are.
Yeah, no.
Ted Bundy was a sweet guy.
Totally sweet guy. Jeff Mudgett had his own show on History Channel, kind of chasing the life of H.H. Holmes. So just really interesting character. But something in these folks snaps. And it's so important to realize that when you think of a serial killer, just go ahead. It's prototypical.
Oh, like a white male in his 30s?
Exactly.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yep. That's what everyone would say.
Yeah.
But the reality is there are serial killers of there's women, there's different races and so on, because the hallmark is you have to blend in. So a white guy, Ted Bundy, let's say, is going to hunt people where he's not going to stick out.
Right.
Right? Like you can't be a black person going into a white neighborhood as a serial killer. You'll stick out. You can't be a white person going into a black neighborhood as a serial killer. You will stick out.
Ted Bundy is talking to females. He was an attractive guy who would stare at that and say, well, that's odd.
Right. They trusted him. He's got a cast in his arm saying, can you please help me just open my car door? That's all I need. Oh, of course I'll help you. And then that's the last you hear from them. So Jolly Jane is a nurse in a hospital.
Very trusting.
With how many witnesses around? Yeah. Hundreds, right?
And we automatically trust people in this profession.
Of course we do.
Doctors, nurses.
We're helpless.
Yeah.
We're lying in bed. Our loved ones are lying in bed, and the nurse comes in. I'm here to care. I'm here to help. And thank you so much. You're a blessing. You're an angel. And you just wait outside. I'll give a little medicine, and then your loved one dies. And you go, oh, it was her time or his time.
Well, you got to think. A lot of these people get into the business to help people. Probably most.
Sure, of
right?
course. Yeah, it's a calling.
And then some of them get into it because they want to see the insides of a body.
Yeah, that's
you know what I mean?
Right.
Like you're going to see some things.
Those people are called surgeons.
Right. I don't trust any of them.
Right, yeah.
Because if they're not surgeons, they're going to be serial killers.
Right. Right. I trust nurses. I always did, But
the people that actually get in and rummage around my spleen,
they're broken.
Yeah,
something's wrong with them. No, for sure. It's a crazy story, but it was one of those things where I'm like, when I started reading it, I was like, why haven't I heard of this? Amazing. Today's your birthday.
It is. Thank you.
So
happy birthday.
Congratulations to making it all this way.
50 years old, Jeff.
50.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say the number.
I have no problem at all.
You did. Okay.
Yeah.
Half a century.
Yeah. Now I'm going to stress about 60, but I'm going to start now. So you know what I mean? That's what you do.
That's just smart. Yeah.
So that by the time I'm 60, I'll be so tired of myself stressing about it, I'll be okay.
You literally have like 3,650 days.
Yeah.
To like from clock starts.
But you get to a certain age and you're getting up there. You start doing.
Whoa.
Come on, you are. You're no spring chicken either.
Fine.
We don't. We start doing math in our head.
Yeah.
Like our kid is going to be this age when they get married. How old will I be? Will I have grandkids? I want grandkids.
Yeah.
Can I marry my 11-year-old daughter off now and get the process started? But you can't do that because it's not 1792.
Right.
Yeah.
Or ethical or legal or any number of other things. No, I get it. We start to feel our age, but
I'm good. I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm living a good life.
Doing
I'm
a lot
living
of
the
good
life
things.
I want to live.
Yeah, you're on
Doing
the
this.
radio, you're doing this, you're in bands, you're playing music, man.
Yeah.
You
You can't stop. That's the key. Just don't stop.
Right, because objects in motion stay in motion.
Right.
So one quick thing, I'd like to plug an event I have coming up.
Yeah, please.
And this is sort of a relevant conversation. So live events are starting to happen again, especially in the paranormal. And I've got one coming up Memorial Day weekend, May 27th to 28th, in Westchester, Indiana, the Randolph County Asylum. Ghost hunt event, the whole thing.
Nice.
Now, this event was announced just this past week. The speakers are Dave Schrader and Shane Pittman from the Holzer Files. Dave's done voices for us. Author and medium, Kitsy Duncan. But there's one other person that's on the bill that got a lot of attention, a lot of social media comments on my page. Stormy Daniels.
Yeah, I saw the interview.
So Stormy, I put the thing up, and boy, oh boy, Stormy Daniels. Yes, that one, the adult film actress and director who was embroiled in a scandal in the media. Back in 2016. Man, oh man, do people have strong things to say about her.
Really? Was it bad?
It was really bad. Like, a lot of people disparaged her for her work in adult films.
Okay.
And I'm like, that's not fair. I mean, to just look down on her because of that.
Sure.
And then it started getting political. And then once it's political, like, you just got to walk away because people are just going to scream now. And
There's some people out there that don't appreciate her
I guess not.
coming forward and doing what she did.
Well, so once on your Facebook thread, once it turns political, like, it's over.
Right,
like,
right.
It's just the game is lost. There's no winner. Everyone has to walk away at that point. So it's too bad. But anyway, I had this interview with her, and you can watch it on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, and it was on Facebook. I was like, well, let's just meet her and talk about the paranormal. She's way into it. She reads tarot. She ghost hunts. When COVID hit, she used her own money and her own crew to go look at haunted places. And so anyway, I thought it was really interesting. Darknessevents.com. There's also a link on our website. Shameless plug, but I thought it was really interesting because Stormy Daniels certainly became a lightning rod for attention. And
You think there'd be more money in porn, though? She's switching over to somebody she's not going to make a lot of money.
No, I promise you. But it occurred to me, I'm like, so people have looked down on her whole career because she works in adult film, and people think of sex workers as less than everybody else,
right.
which I think is not fair and horrible and judgmental.
It's a decision that people make,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I'm sure there are some bad production companies that don't
Absolutely.
treat their people
Right.
well, but there's a lot of legitimate ones, too.
Sure, and I mean that includes everything from exotic dancers
Yep.
to every other kind. And now she's getting into the paranormal where people look down on you because you believe in ghosts. And I was like, you poor thing.
can't win.
You can't you can't win. But it was a really interesting conversation, and we're all going to be together this May. If you want to hang out with us, tickets are at darknessevents.com. You can ghost hunt. We'll do talks. And I mean, you can hang out with me
and
all
a porn
weekend.
star.
And Stormy Daniels. And it should be
Former porn star, I should say.
Yeah, I believe.
Yeah?
I think she's just directing now. I don't know.
Hey, good for her. She's making a living.
Absolutely. So anyway, from serial killers to ghost hunting and
To porn.
to porn, I guess, and everything in between. Until next time, remember,
The bazaar is closer than you think.